Authors Over 50, Writing in Life's Sweetest Third. Authors Over 50's weekly podcast celebrates writers and their journeys to publication. Writing after 50 is a whole story on its own, so let's skip to life's sweetest third and talk with authors about their journey from pen to publish. Welcome. I'm Julia Daly, your host, and I invite you to listen to interviews with writers who've achieved their goal of publishing a book just later in life. We've seen award lists for under 30 or under 40, but I've yet to see lists for those who've achieved a significant milestone of their own, launching a new career and publishing their first book after the age of 50. We will hear about these authors' inspirations, struggles, strategies, and the smell of that first book. These writers' journeys inspire me because I'm one of them. My guest today is an award-winning author, career coach, and life coach, working with individuals in career and life transitions. She has a passion for helping people discover their unique gifts to create meaningful work and fulfilling lives. She was on the faculty of the Creative Work Life Transitions program at San Francisco State University for 15 years and continues to teach at other adult education venues. Her book is Awaken to Your Calling, a guide to discovering your career path and life direction. Welcome to Authors Over 50, Randi Benator.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. It's wonderful to be here.
Our opening question on Authors Over 50 is, what took you so long to write your first book?
I love that question. That's fantastic. I would say for me, it was organically the right time, where I'd been working with clients for years. I've been in practice over 25 years now, and I was seeing clients for many years individually. And then I started teaching workshops around career transition, life transition, finding your purpose, finding meaningful work, those kind of things. And it felt like the individual work and the workshops were what was right then. And then at a certain point, I kept feeling like, I think I have a book in me too. There feels like that's the next step. So it was like an organic process of working with people. And then what I started having happen was things would pop into my mind that I wanted to share in writing. And I started keeping like a notebook, and like I'd have these different ideas, and I'd be driving in my car, and suddenly there'd be like, oh, like this whole piece of writing would come. So I finally started having like a notebook in my car and different places, because like ideas would just start flowing and I would start writing them down. And then a few years later, I was like, okay, it's time to actually put attention on writing the book. And what's the outline? What exactly is it I want to say? What do I want to share? How do I want to help people? And I felt like there's so many people out there who might benefit from the book, who wouldn't have found me individually or couldn't financially work with me individually, but that could still get some benefit from the book. I mean, it's not like individual deeper work, but they still hopefully could get some inspiration. They could get some practical tools. So it felt like the next natural step. And I think it happened in right timing for me. I don't think it could have happened really much, much earlier than it did.
I feel the same way. I think it takes time for us to develop all of those experiences, and for you to have your business operating for so long, now what you want to share with people, and that book becomes your calling card, especially when you're speaking to groups.
Exactly. And it's interesting. It kind of goes both ways, where I find some people found my book and then they want to come take a workshop or see me individually. And I also find for people who I'm already working with, I'll be like, I think there's this chapter in my book that will really speak to some things you're dealing with, or these couple of chapters here I think would be good for you to read. And they'll come back the next week and like, oh my God, that's exactly what I'm going through. Or, oh, I so resonated with that. So it's interesting. It kind of feeds both ways. And it's really nice to have it out there now, where if I do feel like there's a piece of it that a specific person would benefit from, I can suggest that piece. So that's been really nice.
Well, it sounds like you've been doing this coaching for a long time, but for a lot of us, the premise of life coaching or career coaching has come along in a time for so many who don't have a sense of direction for their lives, many in my own family.
Oh, really?
Can can you tell us some ideas of how you guide someone through this process?
Well, there are so many people out there who are not clear about their direction or haven't found their path yet. And it could be someone who's younger who hasn't figured it out yet. Maybe they're in their 20s or something and they're struggling, or I see a lot of those people or at my workshops, or they could be midlife transition where they're in a period of knowing they want to make a change but don't know what or how. Or some people are even, I've worked with people and I've had people who've read the book who mention it being helpful, who are retiring and are like, well, now what? I still want to have a meaningful life. I want to contribute. I want to, not just be sitting around twiddling my thumbs and watching TV. I want to have a fulfilling life. So what could I still do in this next chapter that would be interesting and meaningful? And some of them never liked their work in the first place. So this is the first time they finally can do something they really want to do. And then some people did have a fulfilling career and, it's just, they're not doing that anymore. It's like, what now? So the book has a few chapters where I do exploration, different exercises for people to get in touch with their interests and their talents and their skills and their needs and preferences. And then there's a place where you put it all together. Like, okay, now that you've done these exercises, what are the themes you're seeing? What are those interests? What are those talents? What are the things that you're good at or enjoy? Or, and I have a little section there where in insights that came up while you were doing the exercises and interests that came up and different pieces that people pull together. And then once you have those, okay, so now that you have those pieces, what kind of possibilities fit? Whether it's career possibilities or life possibilities. For some people, it's more career focused. Some people, it's more life focused. Or some people, it's some of both. Like, well, I just want to move forward into a new chapter of my life in a new way with more meaning or more purpose. And it's meant for those people too, where, I think we all have specific to us talents and interests and skills that are different than anyone else. We're all unique. And if we're living a life that expresses those, whether in our work or in our life, then we're more fulfilled, we're happier, our life's more meaningful, and we're also contributing more to others. And if we're not, something's often missing. Most of us, I know I have had jobs when we were younger or whenever, where you knew it wasn't a good fit and you needed the income and, it's a paycheck or you didn't know what else to do or you didn't know how to find something else. I remember being in a job, every Sunday night, I dreaded Monday when I was much younger. And I'm thinking, there's lots of people out there like that. And I want to help those people, it's, I think we're all meant to do something that expresses our uniqueness. And again, it could be career, it can be life. It doesn't really matter as long as you're doing it in some way. And if you're not, something's missing. And I share a story in my book at the beginning about myself where I remember just feeling underutilized. I just wasn't using as much of myself as I wanted to be. And I knew it, but I didn't know how to kind of okay, but how do I get to where I am? And now in my work, I feel totally utilized. I'm using the best of who I am. I'm using where my gifts are. I'm using the things. It's very aligned with my interests. Very interested in personal development and personal growth and helping people. And so I think it's important for all of us to have that in our life in some way, shape, or form. And I would say to people, if you feel like you don't, listen to that. If there's a longing for more, listen to that and see what's going on, because there's a reason you're feeling that. And hopefully if you read the book, hopefully it would help you find it through some of the exercises. And I also have a lot of quotes and inspiration and People say it's a kind of a nice mix of inspiration and practical. I've heard that from a lot of people. It's very practical, but it's also to inspire people like, yes, you can do it. You can have something that matches who you are and what you have to offer.
It sounds like this is a perfect fit for you for this counseling. And I would hope that everyone can find those fits. When I was growing up, women were told they could be three things. That was a nurse, a teacher, or a secretary. And
Exactly.
so I chose teaching out of those because I can't stand the sight of blood and I couldn't type very well. But but I reinvented myself so many times over the years, and I still think I have so many careers in me, even at my advanced age. And it just really breaks my heart that I watch some of my grandchildren come along and all they're told in counseling is, oh, you're good at math, so you should be an engineer. Well, they don't even know what an engineer does. Nobody really helps them. So I think you're in the right place at the right time to help people find their paths.
Well, and in response to what you were sharing about your grandkids, one of the things is once I help people come up with some different possibilities, then you need to research those possibilities and really find out, well, what exactly is that? Because something may be like, oh, yeah, you're good at math, you should be an engineer, but maybe you would hate being an engineer. So it's important to talk to people who are doing that profession and finding out what's the day like, what are the ins and outs? What do you like? What's challenging? What kind of skills do you need? And also online, you can now, of course, do so much research about finding. You can even watch YouTube videos of people in different professions. And so often people go in blind and then they find out, oh, this is not what I want.
After they've been through 4 years or 5 years of college.
Exactly. Exactly. I remember one client I worked with a few years back where he was in a grad program at the time and was unsure if it was the right fit. And as I was working with him, I said, I'm getting the sense it really isn't probably the right fit. Would you be open to pausing it for a semester while we do this work? And then you can always take it back up. And he said, I think that's a good idea. So he paused it. He was able to take a 1 semester leave, paused it. We worked together and we came up with a completely different thing for him that he was all excited about. That was not what he was doing. And he ended up going to grad school for that instead. And then he sent me an email, a few years later saying, oh my God, I love what I'm doing now. I'm so glad we did this U-turn. And, so many people are in programs and they don't even know what they want to do or if it's the right thing, but they don't know what else to do. So I love helping those people, get clarity.
It must be so gratifying for you.
It is. It's very rewarding. It's really rewarding. I'm curious for you, when did you start your podcast?
Just last March.
Wow.
And, already recorded 146 episodes.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
People have come out of the woodwork. I never knew there were so many of us who have reinvented ourselves only later in life to write our first book after the age of 50. So
that's amazing.
It's exciting to hear their stories because just like yours, it's just so interesting to hear from people all over the world who are choosing to write.
Right. At a certain age, it's like you still have a whole new chapter ahead. But for you, that was a whole new chapter starting your podcast.
It was.
And I'm sure it matches some of your interests and talents and talking to other women writers.
Well, I had written 2 books after the age of 50, so I'm in that group, and I wanted to pay it forward and to my community of writers. And I didn't know that I thought I would do about 10 or 12 episodes and have the old podcast fade, what they call the podcast fade, and then I could go back to writing. But it's really taken over my life because everyone has just loved being on the program.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you kind of, just like a lot of people I work with, you're doing new chapters, you're still being creative, doing new things related to your interest, which is writing. And women, it sounds like too.
When you had all this experience of all this counseling and directing people and to the right places, you decide to write this book. And then once you wrote it, How did you proceed? Did you search for an agent or decide to choose a hybrid, a small press, or did you self-publish?
Well, originally I wrote the book proposal, nonfiction book proposal, and I approached some smaller independent publishers who do like personal growth, personal development, and put in a few proposals. And then I also put in a proposal to She Writes Press. They don't really take that proposal, but you write spring chapters, and you have to do a bunch of other stuff that and you submit. And they're a independent press that does just for women hybrid, but they're choosy. Like they don't take anything. You still have to put in, and they have to accept it to see. And they accepted it and were interested, and so I went with them, and they just needed copy editing, so I just went through the copy editing with it, and so I kind of went through that whole nonfiction looking for the right fit experience, and I liked that they did books just by women. I thought that was a nice niche, and that they were small. But they also had a lot of, they have traditional distribution and get your books in all the bookstores and stuff like that and help market it.
They're very well respected in the industry. And I've interviewed a lot of women from there who brag about the community that they establish for all of their writers.
Yeah, there's a Facebook group for the writers. And then also my year of writers did our own cohort where we would have some Zoom meetings and support each other. So it's nice to connect with some of the other women authors from other parts of the country. And so that's nice too, to have some kind of connection. I think often when people publish, it's more just by themselves. And I knew I didn't want to self-publish. Like, one, I'm not very tech savvy. I thought I don't want to have to deal with all the tech side of that. And also I thought it just would feel too isolating. I wanted to be with some kind of publisher. So I'm glad I went the route of not doing it on my own, which so many people do. But it's right for some people, but I just knew it wouldn't be a good fit for me.
It's nice to have a partner in the industry. I'm with a small press myself, and it's really nice. But we all, even I understand the big five publishing companies are requiring their authors to do most of their own publicity. And, most of us want to write. We don't want to promote ourselves.
Right.
You have a built-in audience, really, but have you found any other publicity efforts that have worked for you, or maybe that didn't work?
Well, I would say the stuff that worked better was more, for me personally, was more the efforts I did on my own than, like, I did have a publicist I paid to help publish. And I know She Writes Press does a little bit, but I didn't find that so much happened with the publicist or with them. And more the efforts I put out for myself in terms of reaching out to bookstores to do a signing or a talk, podcasts, radio, things like that. So I would say I was a little disappointed with, I liked my publicist a lot, but with the results, like I was thinking, oh, they're going to get excerpts in magazines. They're going to, have it mentioned in different places. Well, it didn't really happen. I got a few podcasts and stuff, but I got those on my own too. So, and I think that is the experience of some other people I've spoken to, where you spend all this money on a publicist and, they get a little bit, but it's not like so much. And I think for me, in some ways, because I have a business doing what my book is about, and I do other stuff too. I do life coaching, which the book is more focused on the career direction path and life path. I also do general life coaching, but I think, my clients or students are often the people who will get my book or recommend it to others. Some of them have bought it as gifts for people they knew who were going through the same thing. Like, oh, I have a friend who's going through this, or I have a kid who's going through this, and then people will get it as a gift. So I do feel like my own efforts probably got me the most publicity. So
I think that's pretty true for most of us.
Really? Interesting. And I think in a way we're our best because we care about what the book's about. We care about what's in there. We know it the best, right?
Well, Randy, why don't you tell us a little bit more about the passage you've brought to share today and then read from it so we can hear your tone and voice in the book?
Oh, thank you. Sure. So I'm reading a few paragraphs. I have in the book kind of an overview, and then I get into doing exploration and pulling things together. And then I talk about the obstacles people face, inner and outer, and also like steps along the way. Like once you get clarity, how do you get there? And different ways of taking a leap versus building a bridge. And I have a chapter in there about transitions, like the bigger picture of what's it like being in a transition and how do you move through it gracefully and being with uncertainty and all of that. And then in the book, I have a few little sidebars. So this is one of my little sidebars. It's like a page of like it's its own little piece. So it's called Living a Life True to Ourselves. And the quote I have with it, I have a lot of quotes in the book, says, "This above all, to thine own self be true." William Shakespeare. Bonnie Ware, an Australian nurse who worked for over a decade with patients in the last 3 to 12 weeks of their lives, began recording the top regrets people have on their deathbed. The number one biggest regret: I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. This is one of the obstacles I've seen come up for many students and clients. Making choices that grew out of what others wanted for them or thought was best for them, rather than making choices from a place of inner knowing and being true to their own desires. Sometimes, as I am working with a client, it will become clear that the reason they are so unhappy in their chosen career or life direction, and why it is not a good fit for their talents, abilities, and interests, is that their decision to go in this direction in the first place was made from the desire to please others, or there was a pressure put on them to live as others expected of them or encouraged them in that direction. I remember when I was a college student, my father, a CPA and partner in an accounting firm, wanted me to work in his office during my summers off. Luckily, my father had work that was a good fit for his natural skills and ability and personality, and enjoyed his work, and just wanted to offer me an opportunity to do something similar. Now, I am not good at numbers. I stink at math. I don't like office work or sitting at a desk for long hours. And I'm very much a people person. And at the time was in the midst of studying psychology at college. I did later get a master's in counseling, but this is when I was in undergrad getting my psychology degree. Accounting was simply not a good fit for me. Luckily, I knew this about myself and refused his offer and chose other work for my summers. And he was gracious enough to allow me my freedom to choose, even if I initially met some strong resistance. Yet some people take a summer job or fall into a direction set out for them by others, and many years later are still there doing the same thing or some version of it, and it's still not a good fit. Are you one of these people? Have you adapted in ways in your life or work to what others wanted or expected of you and lost your way with what you really wanted to do? Remind yourself of the most common regret of all. Quotes, "I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me." And do what you need to do, and do what you need to so that you do not find yourself with this same regret as you are nearing the end of your life. Better yet, do what you need to do so that you near the end of your life feeling just the opposite. Quotes, "I had the courage to live a life true to myself rather than the one others expected of me."
That's so important. And I think so many of us had careers that just paid the bills. You know, we had to work. I was a single parent for a long time and I had to work 2 or 3 jobs, and they weren't anything that I wanted to be doing. And, you know, so many people get caught up in that. And I love that you put a real life experience there, both yours and the woman who dealt with hospice patients, and talk about end of life, because that's where a lot of us are. The majority of us in the country are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And often I think we do have periods where we just need to have a job just to bring the income in, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's important at times just to have that. I think what happens is sometimes people never move beyond that, where instead of like, yes, for now I need to do this and make a living and have my survival needs met or take care of my children. But maybe while I'm here, I can still plan and look at what I might want to do in time that would be more satisfying and fulfilling, and hopefully still make money doing that too. It's not necessarily an either or. So I think it's fine to have jobs just for making money as a transitional thing. And I always encourage people, do what you need to do to get your basic needs taken care of while you figure out what you may want to do longer term. And you can slowly make that transition when the time is right.
Well, do you have any other books in you?
Well, I would say at the moment, no. So at the moment, I don't have plans for another book, but I'm also open to that. There could be a point down the road where something new wants to emerge and wants to be written. So at the moment, I feel like this book captured everything I wanted to say. And 10 years from now, I may want to say some new things, or I may be in a new chapter of my work or my life where it's like, oh, there's a whole nother piece I want to write about. I mean, it's interesting. Mine came out during the pandemic, so it was tough, because it was hard to do some of the normal things you would do because places were not having in-person talks. And I finally was able to get a couple, but yeah, so it was a challenging. It would be nice to have one come out not during a pandemic.
There are a lot of us who have pandemic books.
Yeah. Did yours come out during the pandemic?
Yes.
Both of them? Oh, wow.
Those 2 years.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So you understand.
Unfortunately so.
Yeah.
Randy, what does writing success look like to you personally?
That's an interesting question. What does writing success look like to me? I think I would just love the book to get out to a lot of people who can benefit from it. That it reaches. The main reason I really love to see it get out bigger over time is so that it reaches more people who need what's in it, that can, get something from it that they need. And the more people who find it, who do need it, I don't need people to buy it who don't have the need for it, or if they know of someone who needs it, maybe they could get it for them. Because I do think there's a lot of people who are struggling, who feel lost, who feel confused, who are directionless or unhappy with what they're doing, and just need some support and need some help with, well, how do I get out of this feeling of being lost or stuck or without a direction? And I want it to reach those people. So that would be a success.
Why don't you tell us where people can find you?
I have a website. It's Career and Life Transitions, and that has an S at the end, careerandlifetransitions.com. And it has information about my book as well. There's a book page on there. And obviously the book is on Amazon and everywhere else. So yeah, because my specialty has been around career and life transitions specifically for a long time, although I do help with general life coaching too. Other things tend to come up and then we end up working on those things too. And I have my background, I have, a master's in counseling and a bachelor's in psychology. So I've always liked working with people and helping them in some way, shape, or form. So the book is kind of another expression of that.
I love that. I think that's probably the path I should have taken instead of teaching years ago.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
Some kind of counseling?
I do. That's
so interesting.
Of great interest to me, and I think it must be so rewarding to help people along the way.
It is. Well, you still have plenty of your
Another
life left. You
career. I
never
can
know. You could.
reinvent myself another time.
You could. Well, and it's interesting because your podcast, you're helping people with your podcast.
Yeah.
So it's a nice way, and you seem like you're a natural at it as a host, and I can tell you're using your natural gifts in this. And so it's lovely that you found a good expression for it.
Yeah, thank you.
Hmm.
Well, as always, our last interview question is, our writers over 50 are a unique set. Do you have advice for writers 50 and above?
Well, I would say I wouldn't consider age an obstacle in any way. No matter what age you are, you can make a career or life change. You can write a book and publish a book, or maybe it's not a book. Maybe it's an article. Maybe it's a blog. If you have something you feel like you need to say, trust that you need to say it, whether it's published or not published, or whether it's just for you and friends and family, or whether you want to take it into a published form. I just think age, people do sometimes say, I'm too old to make a change, or I'm too old to do this new thing, whether it be writing or whatever. So I always encourage people that I don't think age matters. I honestly didn't even consider it when I wrote it. Never entered my mind that, oh, I'm getting up there. It's too late to write a book. I just thought, oh, I have something to say. I'm going to say it, and hopefully it'll help people. And so that would be my biggest message to other writers.
That's great advice. And I can see what a wonderful job you do with helping people find their way and find their paths, and through all transitions of life. I can see that you're very good at what you do. And we just appreciate your being with us today. And I know this is an important book, and I plan on buying some copies for my family members. So.
The ones who need it, right?
Exactly.
Wonderful.
So, thank you so much. And we are happy to say that you're now one of our authors over 50.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. This was a real pleasure.
Thank you for joining us today. Please look for Authors Over 50 every Thursday, when we will have conversations with accomplished debut novelists over the age of 50. Please subscribe and share with a friend. And check out my own publication journey after 50 at www.juliadaily, that's DAILY, like dailynewspaper.com. Until next time, keep reading and writing. And remember, it's never too late to fulfill a dream in life's sweetest third.